So, hello and welcome. Yes, it's that time of the week. It is a Wednesday, 2 o'clock Mountain Time, and that means one thing and one thing only. For me, anyway, and hopefully for a few others as well. But yes, it is time for Make Stories Matter with Matthew Taylor. I'm Matthew Taylor, founder of Persuasion Through Narrative, and this is our little Facebook Live moment where we get together for a few minutes on Wednesdays and chat about areas of story. Well, 'tis the season of love. Season. There you go. The whole season. It's actually the month of love, I guess. It is Valentine's Day has just zipped by. And so I thought I would do a little series on how love and story go hand in hand in so much of a way. And I've been thinking about this a little bit over the last 6 months or so, with so many people dating, and then how you date online a lot, and other people, and it's like, where does story fit in this wonderful world of love and story? So where does it all matter? So we're going to do three little sessions. And the first one is going to be today, and that is attraction. And then we will do building an emotional relationship. And then we'll also do the last one, which is going to be a little bit of lasting power, or how do you have a long-term relationship and keep it moving. So that'll be the last one, which actually will be in March. So it won't be the month of love. So we will call it the season of love. 'Tis the season of love. Anyway, let's get into it. An attraction, which is kind of a crazily kind of cool idea and thought. So we will be talking about attraction for the relationship side of things for humans. But there's always attraction. A lot of this will cross over many of the other areas that we've chatted about in the past as well. But what is attraction? And I was thinking about that. I was like, well, we should maybe have a definition of attraction. So I ran to the as my English accent will probably tell you, I ran to the Oxford Dictionary. Oh yes, the Oxford Dictionary, no doubt. Webster's, oh no. Anyway, I had a quick look at what it said, and it goes, attraction, a noun. The action or power of evoking interest, pleasure, or liking for someone or something. And then it had another one there, which was a quality or feature that evokes interest, liking, or desire. And the third one, a place which draws visitors by providing something of interest or pleasure. And I was like, there you go. There's kind of three like little looks at attraction. But the part that I was interested in was the word interesting that popped up in all three of them. But then there was liking, and there was pleasure, there was desire. But really, it's that interest. And I'm like, okay, so how do we attract humans? So the first one, which we should kind of get kind of out there, is the most obvious one, which is we are really attracted often to looks, and that can be it, and most people are. And this can be a little tricky one when we talk about relationships, and especially when we talk about relationships, which we should specify right at the beginning. What I'm talking about is an authentic, long-term relationship that you're looking for or hoping to have. And it's not so much just getting together, or just company, or just somebody for sex, or however it is. It's like, no, that's the frame I'm kind of looking at through these when we say it. And so this idea of looks, there is great beauty in the world, and then there's us, which isn't the great beauty of the world. But when I say us, at least me or others, there are only so many supermodels out there, both male and female, and usually they'll be meeting each other and hanging out at parties with maybe film stars who are beautiful as well. And so this idea, though, that we are governed by what somebody looks like can be a bit misleading, because there are many sayings that will allude to it, such as beauty's only skin deep, and not for everybody, obviously, but there's an awful lot. If that is all that you are hanging your idea on, or your attraction to, then it is quite often unlikely that that will sustain for a long period of time, if that really is the only part. Um, don't judge a book by its cover would be another way of thinking about these kind of things on there. So my thoughts on that side of it is especially if you're online dating, um, is don't get carried away by the photograph. Look past the photograph, because there is so much more that you need to be kind of focusing on if you are looking for finding somebody who you can spend quality and wonderful time with over a longer period of time. And the other part is you kind of need to trust that the beauty in the person that you find will grow as you know them more and more. And I can remember when I first dated my wife Susan, um, and it wasn't like the beauty that had attracted me, really. And I wasn't really thinking of, like, was I more a friend? Were we going to date? It wasn't like, we were just going out or seeing each other. And eventually it kind of grew and grew. And I can remember fairly quickly a day where we're walking down the Pearl Street Mall in Boulder, and it was this really windy day in Boulder, and Susan and I were wandering down, and I looked across, and there she was. Her hair was getting blown in the wind, and she was wearing like this, nothing fancy. It was like a Patagonia like fleece, and I looked across, and I went, oh God, she's beautiful. And it was this realization at the time, but that had not happened at the beginning, but it had grown as I got to know who she really was. And so this idea of selecting somebody or clicking no or yes on somebody just because you've looked at an image or you've just seen them is, in my opinion, you may be missing what is really, really important, which happens to be considerably deeper. So that is just one part, because that is a naturally attraction. So what are the other things that are attractions? I mean, what if that's not it? What are we talking about? So I feel like what we're looking at and looking for are these connections. It's like common interests, common views, ideas. It's discovering if you're compatible. And that compatibility is really because we'll have common interests. So if you have 200 people and you give them some cocktails and snacks to eat on in a big room, and you leave them for an hour and you come back, you will have found that they will have grouped themselves in groups of quite often like-minded or slightly similar kinds of people. They found each other. And that's what we really need to do, because it is very natural. It's a human tendency. And so what we'll talk about a little bit today is how we can help that happen, but really, really quickly. And then also how that can happen. Obviously, part of it can be if you're actually in their presence or spending a time where you're actually meeting people. But then there's also, even if you're doing it through chat or then into a video call or pieces like that, they're all possibilities or of different ways of doing that. But it is the connection that we find between ourselves that I think is the strongest attraction, or certainly the attraction that will hold the longest time for us to be able to kind of expand the time. The longer we expand it, the more chances that it will continue to go. So those are kind of the ways I kind of look at the attraction. Obviously, there's things like clothing and pieces like, but they also fall into those similar things. If somebody dresses really trendily, well, do you? Is that something that you both have some kind of interest in? So let's move on from there. So, because what it is how can we quickly find those? So let's have just a moment to chat about when we have a discussion, when we have a conversation. Now, that conversation can be through text, it can be through, verbally, it can be, but because it's all kind of similar. So this is what I think is important on when we have successful conversations. A success, and I have the deadly board comes up here. There we go, we've got it. Okay. So this is what I think is part of a good conversation. So you'll notice that circle in the middle is kind of the conversation, and it rolls around, it rolls around. But when you have good conversation, there are two processes that are going on. One is obviously you are gathering information from the other person. You're listening and they are delivering information. But if it is truly a conversation, well, then there'll be a moment where they'll stop and you'll talk. And so, really, what you're doing is gathering information and giving information. And if you've ever had that moment where you feel like all you're doing is listening to somebody and they know nothing about you and they haven't asked a single question about you or given you a chance to speak, and often they'll leave. I've had this at networking a couple of times, and I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm going to see if they literally don't ask anything. They know nothing about me by the end of the conversation. But if you chat to them or meet them again, they'll say, oh, I so enjoyed our conversation. I'm like, it wasn't actually a conversation. The huge part of it when this happens is that what you're doing is building understanding. But if it is give and take and it happens like that, you are also building relationship. And this is our kind of key part. And the idea for us is to build not just a relationship like a transactional relationship, but a relationship that is an emotional relationship. And that's what we're heading to as quickly as we possibly can. So that's a little bit just on the idea of the mechanics of a conversation. And again, that can be done through chat, because I know if people are online dating, obviously, some of the early interactions are that. And so when you engage in that area, here's a simple tip. There's a few tips and tools that we like to try and offer during this. And one of them is very simple. Go into it being interested rather than going into it being interesting. I think we as humans often feel like we need to be interesting, otherwise people are not going to be drawn to us. And it's actually really the opposite. If you are interested, it's amazing how people will join and people will kind of be attracted to you, because you'll listen and you'll ask questions, and but it has to be, again, authentic. We're not talking about it will, and if you're not authentic, it will show up and it will not go so well. But if you really go in, if you just think about it like that, it's amazing how it changes how you show up to that engagement. So very simple little bits to do. And then asking questions is really helpful. Now, the questions will also show that you've listened, because they're obviously going to be related to something that they might have said or how it is. But then you can also ask, there's different types of questions, the open-ended and closed ones, which I think that most people really know. Closed being able to be answered with a single word, yes, no, 24, New York City, however. And then the open ones where they have time to expand, which are the ones that usually start with, why do you think that, or how did that happen, and pieces like that. But the ones I think are really important to think about are those little prompts and probes. Because when somebody is speaking or somebody is talking, or even if they're texting, if you can go, oh, that's interesting, tell me more about that. Or how did you first feel when that happened? Or those little pieces. What you're doing is helping your audience to be a better storyteller, to give you more information so you actually can make good decisions and really see who that person is. So those are those two elements, bearing in mind that to listen is also one of the most compassionate things you can do. And we'll even show that. And in next week's one, we'll look a little bit more at what people are looking for in order to kind of join people or follow people. But that is, the listening side is huge, and we're not really super good at that. So while we listen, one of the things that will be happening is that you're going to be sensing these connections happening when they're talking about a subject, or even if they just type something in. It'll be connecting to our long-term memory and pulling out moments that we can kind of connect, and we'll be looking for those. And why do we do that? It really goes back to a quote that I love, which is from Grover. And I thought it was Grover Cleveland initially when I heard the quote, the ex-president from many years ago. And I couldn't find that. And then at one point I was like, perhaps it's Grover the Muppet. And I was like, oh, that'd be awesome if I'm quoting the Muppet. the nearest, like, it wasn't necessarily Grover the Muppet because he wasn't speaking or taking my course. And so, but the closest I got to was somebody who was mentioned to me that it may be a Grover. Uh, 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 Let me get this right. It was Porter, Grover Porter, Porter Grover, Grover Porter, one of the others. He's a guy out in San Diego, criminal defense attorney. Um, but this is what they said. And it was, reveal yourself or others will reveal you. And I was thinking, ooh, wow, I do that all the time. I will see somebody and I will build a picture about that person. You know, they can just be walking down the street or they could be standing on the side of the road holding a cardboard sign. And I go, and I build a little picture in my head about who that person is. And how accurate can that possibly be? I mean, it's just not. There will be elements that may well be correct because it's kind of taking from the stereotype or just the situation. And we're smart creatures, we do that. But there's so much information that's missing. So what I do is I fill in the rest of the details. I just make them up because we thirst for order and we thirst for sense. And so that's what we do. And so this is one of those real world tests that I sometimes talk about, where see whether you do that. And if you do, you go, oh, right, there you go. So our job in any of these moments is to make sure that we reveal who we are as a person so they can see the real you. Then we can help them reveal who they are, which is why those little questions and those little prompts and probes will help us go a little deeper into it, because so much at the beginning is so surface level, and we have to go below the surface to be able to kind of realize who that person is and allow them to see who we are. Once we do that, we can see if there's a compatibility, if there are true interests, not just interests. And we have to be careful in the dating or the kind of trying to find people that world, because we do tend to aim to please and we want this to happen. So people will sometimes it's not really disingenuous. They just truly want to agree. So if you say that you like hiking, there's a really kind of a high chance that the other person would be like, yeah, I like hiking. So this is where the storytelling element, I think, is really, really important, because we want to be specific and we want to have details, not long, lengthy details, especially if you're chatting. But there's a difference between liking hiking and, for instance, having hiked 24 14ers in Colorado, and with your goal to hike all of them within the next 2 years. So that's loving hiking. Whereas if you say that, somebody else who just says they like hiking might be, yeah, no, I hiked last summer one time and it was great. We went out, got out of the car at the parking lot, and we went in half a mile, and then we came back and there was tons of people around. It was in Rocky Mountain National Park. It was great. And you're like, you are two different people. And that ain't going to be a connection. But we only know it if we get those details. And it's the same for anything like that. If you like eating out, great. But what food do you like eating out? Or what is it you like about eating out? So details and specifics are huge because they allow you to really start connecting and seeing. Now, when I said when you're listening, you're looking for those connections. So our wonderful long-term memory, which is like this supercomputer in our heads, they can't work out the capacity still, and it holds all the information you've had. Everything is just tucked away in there. So when you use details and specifics, what's happening is it triggers the other person's long-term memory, and that information will then percolate out. So if I talked about I like cats, but even that will connect to a degree there. But if I say that I've got two cats, they're both actually quite old now, but IKEA is nearly 20 years old and is hobbling around the place. You might hear a squawk in the background at some point here. And then I've got Gigi, who's a little tiny cat because we found her in the alley. I think she was probably the runt of the litter. And they, especially over this time where we've been restricted or hurt, have, but they've always been important to me, but I now fully understand the power of emotional sport animals. The next time somebody gets on the plane with me and he's next to me and he's got a peacock, I'll be like, I get it, dude. Yeah, bring your peacock on. It's okay. I've got it. Um, but but even just sharing, even if I just share those names and the ages, the likelihood is you've connected in a different way. And it might even be a connection that, oh, I'm a dog person. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to get along. It could be, that would be the next thing that somebody would say, will come out with. But it is always the details that will allow it. And the only way we can withdraw information from our long-term memory is through association or cross-connection. So that's why we constantly interrupt each other when we're with friends and groups or families, and somebody will say, oh, I did this last weekend, I went to Crested Butte and there was 10 inches of snow, and somebody's like, oh, I went to Winter Park and there was 14 inches of snow, and then it just builds and builds and builds, and everybody is in, chatting away. Why are we like that? Because the story that we interrupt you with is about us. And we're selfish creatures. We like them if they're about us. It's not a bad thing. But by giving details allows other people to connect. And then when they start talking, you can kind of just ease up. Again, similarly, it will happen in chats. Now, it's much, you might think it's much easier, obviously, just say, I like the outdoors. I like long walks along the beach. It's all of those things. It's like, eh. So this whole piece of connection can go all the way back to, if it is an online situation, to your profile. It's like, and what I often talk about on stories is think of stories as little tiny moments. So if you like long walks on a beach, when was the greatest long walk you ever did on a beach? And where was the beach and what was the name? And was it in this country or was it in Mexico? Or was it in the British Virgin Islands? And even as I'm saying it, I'm triggering my own long-term memory, because I was lucky enough to go with some friends, and we chartered a boat and sailed around the British Virgin Islands. But I so remember a moment where I had a paddleboard and I took it on to this completely beach. There was not a soul. I was going to say abandoned. I'm like, not sure. Is there such a thing as an abandoned beach? But it was like, wasn't a soul. And it was that beautiful crystal white kind of sand, the coral white sand and the water. And I pulled up the board and I just laid there in the sun. And I'm more of an active person than I am laying, for a long time. But I laid on that beach and just had the water lap up and down off my feet for probably 45 minutes. But I hadn't thought about that coming onto this talk or, during this little moment. But as soon as I just happened to say long walks on the beach, boom, there it went. And as soon as you do that, it pops out, and that's how we get to know each other. And if you think about things, if you think about friends you have, one of the reasons they're friends is because we know things about them. And if you think about old friends where you've had a long time to gather stories and ideas and thoughts with them, what happens is you can be away from them for 2-3 years, see them, and within 10 minutes it's as if you've never been apart. And that's kind of the attraction that we're looking at. That is, and especially as we take it through the next weeks, where we're looking at what it is to really build that relationship. And then the last week where we'll talk about how can you have the staying power that you can do, so it just goes and goes and goes, and it's always fun and it's always enjoyable. So those are some of the pieces. Another thing I often say to people is, just bear in mind that the small talk is actually the big talk. People will often say, I had a guy when I was going to do a talk over for the taxation professionals in America, and which was great, and there was like 800 or 900 of them, and it was out in Michigan, and I remember chatting to this guy Paul before I went on stage, and he was like, I do the small talk, and then I can tell them how I can help, reduce their tax bills by doing this clever thing with and he kept going back, I do the small talk, and eventually I had to go, stop, Paul. I was like, the small talk is the big talk. that little bit where you're chatting at the very beginning and you're like, what is it you like to do? Or I noticed you've got a Michigan, sweatshirt or something like that. And did you ever go to the big stadium? And, whatever those are, that's where we start building the relationship and the understanding. And so those are super simple to do, and pay attention now to see if people do it. A lot of this is kind of general awareness. So those are pieces that I would definitely kind of consider, be thinking there, because it is those details. And so I've got these are the little bits. Think again of those stories as little small pieces. So when you do that, it's like, when was the moment? Of as I said, of the walk on the beach, or the hike, or in the restaurant, the food, the moment, the taste. How was it? But get to it. And especially obviously you don't, if you're doing it. So here are the little tips for the day. A little bit here. We mentioned that little piece about being interested, not interesting. Names is a huge one. We didn't chat so much on that, but just use names. People don't for some reason, but always, as I said, if it is the restaurant you love, it's the name of the restaurant, it's the name of the dish, or what you loved, and then a little bit about how it made you feel, or why you liked it so much. But names, people, places, all the rest, it's huge. Get to it. We don't need exposition, guys. Not so much. I mean, we need enough of context, and yes, of course, we do need it, but it's very little. We want to get to the meat of it, or why you enjoyed it, or how it was, or what the moment was. And then just remember, that small talk really is big talk, and this will be for everything that you do on there. So that kind of covers some of the bits that we were really kind of go for on this idea of attraction. It's not as hard as we kind of think it is. Two things that I think are really kind of key. One is, if they know who you are as a person, really can kind of have a very quick sense of who you are, and you can get a sense of who they are. Bear in mind, you'll have to be asking the right questions in the right way, the right time, to try and draw it out, because we don't see this happening, especially in this kind of setting, all the time. People tend to be much more reserved and trying to hold things back. But if we do that, first of all, we can see if there is compatibility, if there is a connection. And it will be so exciting and so evident that a second date, or actually meeting in person, or heading towards a video call rather than being, just chatting online, it will be a very natural progression. And then we'll see next week on how to expand on those pieces. But the other part that is huge, I think, is that just as much as you'll see when that connection's there, you'll also see when that connection isn't there. And so you'll know. But not only you, they will probably know too. And it will be one of those moments where it's like, it's been wonderful knowing you, meeting you and doing it. And however, gracefully you can do it, you'll probably both have that realization that, what, we're not going to be right for each other necessarily. It doesn't mean either of us is right or wrong or good or bad or anything like that. It's just that true connection that will give you an opportunity to have true happiness over a long period of time just isn't there. So it can save an awful lot of time as you go through it. So please reach out if you have questions. Matthew Taylor, MatthewTaylor.com is my website. We do have a Facebook group for storytelling, which is Powerfully Fun Storytelling. I also have a YouTube channel, which this will be posted to fairly shortly. And there are other kind of little chats that we've done on Facebook Lives and some of my storytelling on there. And that is Matthew Taylor Storytelling. So please go on there and subscribe, because I've just kind of started that one out. So if you have comments, post them in there, or send me an email, or reach out, and we'd love to chat about it. Otherwise, I will see you next Wednesday for Facebook Live at 2 o'clock for Make Stories Matter. And remember, next week's is going to be on building an emotional relationship. Take care. Lovely to see you guys. Bye.